We will go beyond geographical and cultural boundaries to explore how religions influence human lives and how humans in turn shape their spiritual experiences. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, may peace and blessings be upon the noble messenger. Peace and Allah's mercy and blessings be upon you all, dear viewers, and welcome to your program, People and Religions. In this episode, we will explore the phenomenon of conversion to Judaism and its connection to the Israelites. We will specifically examine the mass conversion of the Khazars, one of the most significant historical examples of this phenomenon. Of the spread of the Jewish religion by embracing other religions like Islam, Christianity, and Buddhism. Historical studies supported by scientific evidence have been influenced by the overwhelming majority of the world's Jews today. The Ashkenazi Jews are of Khazar origin and have no relation to the ancient Jews or the sons of Israel at all. Khazars, before embracing Judaism, was a state. On the northern shores of the Caspian Sea, the Khazar state was established after their Turkish ancestors migrated from their original homeland in Central Asia. The Khazars share the same origins as the Seljuks and the Oghuz, who embraced Islam after their migration from their native lands. Stay with us, dear viewers, as we delve into the phenomenon of conversion to Judaism and its connection to the Israelites with Dr. Alaa Hailat. How are you, Doctor?
May Allah bless you.
Of course, Doctor, in the previous episode, we discussed the Jewish religion, its foundations, pillars, religious teachings, and holy books. It originated during the Babylonian captivity in the 6th century BC, about 6 centuries after Moses' era, peace be upon him, but the group that created it was the sons of Israel. Did this group retain its new religious foundations and ethnic affiliation with the sons of Israel?
Yes, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, and prayers and peace be upon the most honorable creation and messengers, our Master Muhammad. May Allah bless him and grant him peace in his all-pure family. Now then, Doctor, in this new episode in which we will complete, Allah willing, the topic of conversion to Judaism or transitioning from Judaism to Judaize, we mentioned that Judaism originated during the Babylonian captivity, after which the Persian civilization took control of present-day Iraq. Cyrus the Persian helped the Jews return to the land of Canaan to build what they called the temple. Later, or in the Babylonian captivity, they returned on 4 campaigns. From the establishment of the second temple, now called the Temple of Ezra or the Temple of Zorobabylon, there was a gathering for them in Jerusalem and its surroundings for approximately 100 years or less. They were under Persian rule until Greek rule came from Greece and controlled the entire region of the Levant at the beginning of the 4th century BC. For 200 years after the end of the Greek rule that lasted for 2 centuries, the Romans took control of the Levant region. The Jews, who later came to be known as the Jews and are descendants of Jacob, peace be upon him, from the tribe of Judah, who altered the religion of the Israelites, also fell under Roman rule for a long period, starting from the 2nd century BC. The relationship between the Jews, or the newly emerged Jews, and those who altered the Jewish religion from the original faith of the Israelites was very bad. This negative relationship led in the 1st century AD to several attempts by the Romans to expel or eliminate the presence of the Jews in the Canaan region or the Levant region in general was the focus of these attempts. These efforts culminated in a campaign to disperse or exile the Jews at the beginning of the 2nd century AD in 136 CE. A Roman military campaign struck the Jews, or what remained of them, in the land of Canaan, and completely ended their presence in the Levant. Here, several Jewish migrations took place. One of the most important of these migrations was the migration of 5 Jewish families or tribes to the northern part of the Arabian Peninsula. These were the ones who settled in Yathrib, which later became known as Medina after the advent of Islam, in Khaybar, Wadi al-Qura, Taima, and Tabuk. These Jews were the ones whom Muhammad, peace be upon him, would meet 4 centuries later when he was sent as the Prophet of Islam.
Okay, good doctor. Was the Torah that the Jews who lived during the Prophet's time had also the same Torah copied from the Babylonian exile?
Yes, it was the Torah that was copied from the Babylonian captivity, and they did not have the Talmud. They were Torah followers, not Talmudic.
Yes.
But it was still with its distortions, or with the renewals and updates that occurred during the Babylonian captivity. However, it still retained some of the heritage of Moses and the religion of the sons of Israel.
Can you clarify for the viewers what the difference is between the Torah and the Talmud, doctor?
Yes, Doctor. The difference between the Torah and the Talmud is that the Torah is the book in which the tribe of Judah, or the priests chosen from the tribe of Judah, led by Ezra during the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BC, compiled their religious heritage attributed to Prophet Moses, peace be upon him. They believe that what they call the biblical heritage is the original Torah, which they believe was written down from heaven on stone tablets, or 2 stone tablets given to Moses, peace be upon him. However, they added many sayings of Moses, peace be upon him, and the heritage of their ancestors over the span of time. Prophet Moses, peace be upon him, lived in the 13th century BC. So when this Torah was written during the Babylonian captivity in the 6th century BC, we are talking, doctor, about 6 to 7 centuries of oral tradition being passed down. From Moses, peace be upon him, to the expansion of this heritage through fathers and grandfathers, it was eventually compiled into the Torah. The Talmud, on the other hand, is the explanation created by Jewish jurists on the Torah, including discussions and jurisprudential dialogues about the religious rulings formed in Babylon and their connection to Moses, peace be upon him.
Can we say that the Talmud is more like a book of jurisprudence for Muslims?
Yes, the Talmud is similar to books of interpretation and jurisprudence, while the Torah is equivalent to the Quran.
Equivalent to the Quran, yes.
Now, doctor, let's go back to what happened. How did the phenomenon of Judaism emerge? It happened through the dispersion of the Jews and their movement from the southern part of Canaan, or from the land of Canaan, by the Romans to the northern Arabian Peninsula. Some tribes went to Iraq, while others went to Alexandria in Egypt. When they interacted with these new nations and peoples, a new phenomenon appeared in history called the phenomenon of conversion to Judaism. This phenomenon refers to the fact that this religion, which the Jews carried with them,
And what was introduced to the religion of the sons of Israel to these nations outside the land of Palestine or Canaan, some nations and peoples who interacted with these scattered Jews came to believe in it. These nations and peoples were originally not from the children of Israel, not from the Levant, not from the region at all. They didn't know Jacob, peace be upon him, nor were they of his descendants, and they didn't know Moses. However, they were impressed by the religious view of Judaism, believing they carried a holy book in contrast to their weak and primitive paganism. It was as if they thought this was truly a heavenly religion, a religion with foundations, and an independent religion. They were fascinated by its vision and converted to Judaism. So here we have a phenomenon in history called the phenomenon of conversion to Judaism, where groups of nations and peoples joined in the religion that the Jews altered during the Babylonian captivity. They were not originally from the children of Israel. The evidence for this is that the Quran, when addressing the Jews during the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, referred to them as, O children of Israel.
Yes.
they are Jews, but they are ethnically linked to Jacob, peace be upon him, who is Israel. However, in other regions such as Iraq, northern Syria, Alexandria in Egypt, and the migration of some Jews to the Maghreb region, certain popular groups or sections began to believe in this newly established religion. They were not originally from the region, nor were they from the sons of Israel. They became non-Israeli Jews, and this phenomenon of conversion and expansion will deepen over time, leading to the creation of the new Jews throughout history.
This, doctor, is a phenomenon that we also notice in the Beta Israel, Falasha Jews who were in Ethiopia, as well as some Jews who were in India, Africa, or Asia, and even the Jews of India.
Yes, sure, Doctor. They are Jews, but they are not Israelis or ethnically related to Jacob. They converted to Judaism, meaning they embraced the Jewish religion just as any person enters a religion that they believe in and accept its worldview.
I often mention the Jews in the Arabian Peninsula who adopted Arabic names.
Yes, they were influenced by Arabian culture.
Influenced by all cultures means Jews transmitted the reality of cultures.
But they could not influence the Arab culture.
Yes, but they are influenced by the culture.
But they were influenced by Arab culture, and some of their names are Arabic. However, they preserved many Jewish names, such as Phinehas,
Right, but there
Azur,
are
and
other
Ezra,
Arabic names.
and Nehemiah, but they are affected by the Arabic culture. They spoke Hebrew, and the Torah was written in Hebrew. However, they learned Hebrew because they lived in this region for 4 to 5 centuries before the arrival of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So they were influenced by Arab culture. But the question, Doctor, is why didn't the Arabs convert to Judaism?
This is the real question. Why didn't the Arabs convert to Judaism?
There was a very intense rivalry, especially between the Aws and Khazraj and the Jewish tribes in Yathrib, yes, and Khaybar, because they believed they were among the people who migrated to the Arabian Peninsula. Before the Prophet's arrival, peace be upon him, the Arabs had strong feuds, particularly between the Aws and Khazraj tribes and the Jewish tribes in Yathrib and Khaybar. They saw themselves as new peoples in the Arabian Peninsula and felt they were not worthy of adopting the Jewish religion due to the tribal disputes and a sense of inferiority in terms of ethnicity and tribal status. That's why the Jews were influenced by the Arabs, but the Arabs were not influenced by the Jews. Arabs despised the behavior of the Jews before the Prophet, peace be upon him, came. They disliked their deceit, their greed, their focus on worldly matters, and their way of life. They also despised their lack of Arab nobility, and in reality, the Jews were characterized by betrayal. The qualities of chivalry were not present in them, so the Arabs didn't estimate them.
Nobility and other attributes.
Yes, so the Arabs were not influenced.
Good, God willing, Doctor. After the break, we will move on to discuss the greatest phenomenon of Judaization, the
It
phenomenon
is the
of the
phenomenon
Khazars.
that greatly influenced the Jews of today.
Thank you, dear viewers. We will take a short break, so please stay with us. Dear viewers, after this short break, we are back with you to continue the remaining part of this episode. Dr. Alaa Hailat, we have an incident in history, which is the phenomenon of conversion to Judaism, where entire peoples converted to the Jewish religion. What would you say is the largest incident in the history of the Jewish religion?
Yes, Doctor, the most significant incident of Judaization, reflecting the phenomenon of mass conversion, occurred with the Khazar people in the 10th century. This event marked the entry of a large nation into the Jewish religion, despite not being from the children of Israel. The Khazar state, which began before the 10th century, expanded and grew during the era of the Muslim Abbasid Caliphate, with its borders extending significantly during that time.
As you can see, Doctor, this mixture began with its borders between the Caspian Sea, which was called the Khazar Sea in the 10th century, and the Black Sea. It started expanding northward, covering a large part of western Russia, extending even to the east of Ukraine. Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, was part of this region, and it had borders with Eastern European countries.
I mean, Doctor, it appears on the map to the borders of Bulgaria
Yes, and even extending to the borders
and
of
also
Bulgaria.
Hungary, meaning part of Eastern Europe was included.
Yes, this large blue-colored state expanded greatly in the 10th century. In the 10th century, it had a capital called Itil, which was traversed by a river named the Volga, still present and well known in the region today. It was ruled by a ruler called the Kagan, or referred to as the Kagan. This state, doctor, was without a
The word
religion.
Kagan, doctor, seems like a Turkish word. Were the Khazars Turkish?
Yes, the Kagans were a mix of Turkish and Tatar origin or race.
They now use the word Hakan, yes. The word Kagan is from modern-day Turkey. Yes, Kagan, but it's pronounced as Kakan.
Yes, the Kagans were a mix of Turkish and Tatar races, and they formed this state, which included a variety of nations and ethnic groups within its borders. It became a very powerful and expansive state, located between Russia and Ukraine, covering a vast geographical area. This state, doctor, in the 10th century, as Ibn Fadlan, the Arab traveler, mentions in his book Ibn Fadlan's Journey to the Land of the Bulgars, this state converted to Judaism, along with its king and the entire population in the 10th century. How did they convert to Judaism? They converted to Judaism because this state had no religion, it was secular. This situation started to affect the demographic and social structure of the state, and the Kagan feared social and military fragmentation. He wanted to establish a religion for the state. Still, he did not want to follow Islam, as he did not want to be subordinate to the Abbasids, nor did he want to follow Christianity to avoid being under the Byzantines in the 10th century. He found that Judaism, being the religion of a minority and weak, was an ideal choice. He summoned some rabbis from Iraq to understand the fundamentals of Judaism. He found that the Jewish religion aligned very closely with his personal and social behavior. He asked this delegation about several matters, and these issues are well documented. For example, he asked about polygamy, women, the consumption of alcohol, and the killing of non-Jews.
They told him that they believed they were the chosen people, as the Kagan and his Khazar people also held the same belief that they were the chosen people destined to rule the world. He adopted Judaism for himself and introduced it to his entire state, and Judaism remained in the Khazar kingdom for nearly a whole century. Ibn Fadlan in his travels mentions that he visited this state. Before they converted to Judaism, and after they had converted, Ibn Fadlan expressed great astonishment when he saw that synagogues had been built there and that their children were learning the Torah in Hebrew in these synagogues. This state completely converted to Judaism in the east of the world. What we have discussed about the children of Israel occurred in the heart of the ancient Near East. They have no connection to the children of Israel, and they are not related to Jacob, peace be upon him. Doctor, but I want to clarify to the viewers how this state became the reason for the existence of Jews today, particularly the Jews of Eastern Europe. By the end of the 10th century, the Russians attacked this state and launched a military campaign because this state had begun to advance into Russian territory, nearly reaching half of Russia, and the Russians struck back at this state. At the end of the 10th century, a strong and decisive blow was dealt to this state, which shattered its power. Abdul Wahab al-Masiri, when talking about this state, said that the population of this state scattered and spread to the surrounding regions, particularly Eastern European countries, especially Poland, Lithuania, and Bulgaria. These countries saw a significant presence of Khazar Jews, who originated from their ethnicity. What are known as Eastern European Jews, who began migrating to parts of Western Europe, became part of the phenomenon of Judaism conversion. These individuals are not Israelis, and they are the ones who founded the global Zionism movement. They called for the establishment of a national homeland in Palestine, yet they are not related to Jacob, peace be upon him, in any way, nor do they belong to the children of Israel. And they are not the Jews who developed Judaism during the Babylonian exile. These individuals simply adopted it as a religion.
Okay, good. What is their relation to the Semites?
Yes, this is another very important topic.
They are not the descendants of Shem, the son of Noah.
They have no relation to Shem, son of Noah. If they are not related to the children of Israel, then who is Shem, the son of Noah? First, how did Semitism appear, doctor? Semitism emerged because the Torah says that Noah, peace be upon him, had 3 sons after the flood.
Shem, Noah's eldest son, inhabited the Arabian Peninsula and the ancient Near East, including the regions known today as the Middle East. From him came the Arab and Aramean peoples of Syria. Ham, whose descendants are said to have inhabited Africa, is often described as having a darker complexion, while Japheth settled in Europe, from which the European peoples originated.
The Arabs, Hebrews, Arameans, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Chaldeans, and all the peoples who emerged or were created in the Near East are considered descendants of Shem. These peoples, including the Arabs, are all Semitic peoples. However, a passage in the Torah refers to Noah, peace be upon him, being accused, Allah forbid, of drunkenness, and that he was naked in his tent or shelter. One of his grandsons, Canaan, the son of Ham, tried to cover him, but Noah, peace be upon him, cursed Canaan and blessed Shem. Today, the Jews claim this blessing of Shem, the blessing of Shem, and that he, as if, covered his father Noah, which is, Allah forbid, an accusation against the prophets. This concept led to the idea of glorifying what is called Semitism, especially after the Holocaust that occurred in Germany. The term became biased to include only those who are connected to the Jews, as if the Jews are the only ones who descend from Shem, which is not true. That doesn't align with either the Torah or history, because the Arabs themselves are Semitic.
Yes, we can say that most of the Khazar Jews are from the lineage of Japheth.
Exactly. The Khazar Jews are not Semitic at all. The descendants of Shem spread across the ancient Near East, and the Khazar Jews do not trace their lineage to Shem or his descendants, from whom Abraham, peace be upon him, and Jacob, who was named Israel, originated.
Great. So, Doctor, what are the effects that resulted from the phenomenon of conversion to Judaism? And what is the impact of this on Judaism as a religion? And also, what is the impact on those who belong to the Jewish faith?
In fact, Doctor, this is a very important question. The largest phenomenon of Judaization was the conversion of nations and peoples, but there were other notable instances as well, such as the Judaization of an emirate in Yemen called the Emirate of Hadiab.
And many nations in the Maghreb, in Africa, in Abyssinia, and in India also converted to Judaism, but this was the largest phenomenon of conversion because the number was nearly in the millions, and they are the ones from whom global Zionism emerged. Now, the impact of the phenomenon of conversion, through which there are Jews who adopt this religious view of Judaism but do not belong to the children of Israel. First, Doctor, the denial
of the ethnic affiliation to the children of Israel is a fact, and this is what everyone must understand. The Jews today who migrated to Palestine and occupied it are mostly from the Khazar Jews and are not connected at all to Jacob, peace be upon him. Secondly, Judaism has transformed into a religious vision. Anyone who believes in it is affected by it, shaping their behavior and perspective on life and humanity. Finally, Doctor, one of the effects of this phenomenon of conversion to Judaism is the negation of the concept of the chosen people and the promise of the land. The idea of the chosen people was originally associated with the children of Israel, based on the assumption that we agree with it. Since the children of Israel no longer exist today and Jews today have adopted this religious vision and are neither from the children of Israel nor from the descendants of Shem, they have no right to claim it. Therefore, they have no right and they are not the chosen people. The promise of the land, assuming we agree with it to some extent, came to Abraham, peace be upon him, and his descendants. However, the Jews today are not descendants of Abraham and have no rightful claim to this promise.
Are not descendants of Abraham nice?
One of the key effects of the phenomenon of Judaization is the transformation of the Jews, both in reality and in culture, and its influence on the nations and peoples among whom they lived. If you allow me, I would like to conclude with this point. For example, when we compare the Jews of Yemen with the Jews of Russia, the latter were cultured with Russian culture in every way. Their way of life is Russian and their language is Russian. On the other hand, the Jews of Yemen were influenced by Yemeni culture. Yemeni Jewish women wear the veil, and their customs and traditions in marriage, mourning, and other aspects are the same as those of Yemen. But the Jews of Russia or Ukraine, their culture is Ukrainian or Russian, depending on where they lived. As Abdel Wahab el-Masiri says, the Jews became functional groups influenced by the countries they lived in, without a single unifying culture like Hebrew or Israeli culture. Despite the efforts of the State of Israel to achieve this, it has not succeeded to this day. In conclusion, this is one of the secrets that this makes the state of Ukraine and its relationship with Judaism significant, as it was the heart of the ancient Khazar state from which today's Jewish population emerged.
Beautiful, Doctor. Your words reminded me of the Almighty's saying, "We will bring you forth in one gathering," meaning these people came from all parts of the earth, with no kinship or ethnic connection, only religious ties.
And Allah Almighty says, you think they are together, but their hearts are diverse.
All right, Doctor. At the end of this episode, dear viewers, we have reached the conclusion of today's show. We would like to express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Alaa Hailat for his clarifications, and we ask the Almighty to grant that we have provided useful information. In the end, we conclude that, despite the profound intellectual and historical disagreement regarding the views and ideas of the Hungarian-born Jewish thinker Arthur Koestler, regarding the spread of Judaism through conversion rather than ethnicity, most of the current Jews are not Semitic, and thus the idea of the chosen people is invalid. However, some Western writers believe that Koestler's book, The 13th Tribe, was aimed at European intellectuals, and he was trying through it to soften the West's hostility toward Jews, telling them that European Jews are not descendants of the children of Israel. The Christian world accuses them of killing Christ, but they are Europeans who converted to Judaism. However, the magic turned against the sorcerer. There are those who say that Koestler himself admitted his grave mistake after witnessing how his book was used to question the Jews' right to the land of Israel. It is worth noting that Koestler was a proponent of Zionism and the return to the land of Israel, and he served as an assistant to Zeev Jabotinsky, one of the leaders of the Zionist movement. Thank you for following along with us. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode, where we will continue our journey exploring important issues concerning humanity and religions. Stay safe and healthy. Peace be upon you, and may God's mercy and blessings be upon you. We will go beyond geographical and cultural boundaries to explore how religions influence human lives and how humans in turn shape their spiritual experiences.